I've been having this discussion. I'm tempted to call it an argument, but it's more of a discussion with my father, who is one of my few supporters, true supporters, but also one of my best critics. And he says that I should do more of these solo podcasts where I take a topic, something, and I analyze it and I give my views. Because he says, no one knows who the hell you are, and no one knows what you stand for, and he's right. I'm not a well-known person. Um, and I mean, there are various ways to be known, to be well known, and it's not necessarily about what you think about certain things. But he says, and I have my own sort of ideas and plans for that, but he says, look, you're a podcaster, and you should say what you think, put it out there, and do it again and again and again and again and again. Now, he's looking at this from, I would say, and perhaps I'm wrong, but he is looking at this from a mainly commercial point of view. He says this is what sells. This is what gets clicks. And again, I think he's correct in saying that. I mean, without clicks, what the fuck do you got? Just a guy talking into a microphone. Okay. The struggle and the tension, and this is sort of the thing that's been hard for me, and I'm working my way through it, is how do you get clicks and not for the price of your soul? Because I've been there, and it's not a good place. It's a trap. And it's a trap for the following reason, because once you start trying to appease the herd, you're screwed. You might think you're telling the truth, but you're screwed. So my father, I took his suggestion strongly, because why not? I don't think he's totally wrong. I think he has a point. And so I was just like sort of searching for stuff to talk about. And this video of Ahed, which I'm going to walk you through, came up. Ahed Tamimi. And it caught my attention because it encapsulated so much of what is wrong with the Palestinian culture. But where I struggled for a while, I mean, this was a few weeks ago where we had my father and I spoke about this. Where I struggled for a while was the fact that I didn't know how to approach it. And how do I dissect this thing where this woman who became this national symbol, this icon, because she slapped an Israeli soldier a couple of years ago and then went to jail for it. And you can see her self-destructing in real time, becoming genocidal by the minute. And it's fascinating to me, but it's also a personal insult. And I mean, all of Palestinian culture is a personal insult to me, because I'm Jewish and I lived there for 14 years, and 14 great years. I met my wife, my 3 sons were born there. And I won't say that those were the best years of my life, because I think every moment is the best. But while I was there, they were the best. And I view those years very fondly. And Israel is a wonderful place, and it has an electric energy, and it's a very creative energy, and a very productive energy, and you can see it because you've got amazing restaurants, amazing companies, amazing people, amazing architecture. There's a lot of stuff going on in Israel that's wonderful, and like those are the things that make life great. And so when I see, and then I read, because I did read Tamimi's autobiography, when I see this stuff and I experience someone expressing this. Essentially, it's a revenge fantasy, right? Because I had, like most Palestinians, dreams of a world in which Israel doesn't exist. I mean, she says so explicitly. She thinks that there should be a one-state solution. Essentially, right, destroy Israel. Now, it's genocidal because A, even if they say, well, let's not kill anyone. Let's make this a bloodless revolution here that Israel's gone. It's like, first of all, no. How do you convince people to give it up? Oh no, we boycott everything. Okay. And then what? Who gets to take charge? Is it Hamas? Is it the Palestinian Authority? What happens to the people who are so-called refugees, who've never spent a second in Israel, but believe that, some property in Haifa, in Tel Aviv, Jaffa, wherever, Jerusalem, it's theirs. What happens to those people living there right now? Do they just have to get up and go? Nobody has any answers for this crime because nobody ever thinks it through. It's just a revenge fantasy. It's not well thought out. There's nothing responsible about it. It's not serious. It's just this thing must go. It must get this thing off my neck. And it's interesting to think about that psychologically. And it's tempting to stand there as a judge and say, "You genocidal piece of shit. Who do you think you are?" But that isn't me. Um, and so to sort of stand there and pretend like I'm on the Piers Morgan show and yell at this person and say, "Here, I'm just going to destroy you," which I could do easily because it's not hard. It's really not hard. All the facts are there. It just takes a little bit of logic, and that's it. But the fact that it's not hard means it's cheap and cheap and ineffective because we've been having these debates for decades, and yet here we are. So where's the failing? I mean, there are multiple failures, but it all ties back to the same thing, which is that you have to tell the truth. And so to ape and to mimic the media landscape now for the sake of clicks is really a very, very bad idea, and it's a trap. Now, I come from the media world, or I should say, I worked there for 8 years. I worked at Bloomberg News for 8 years. I was a reporter, business reporter, and then I became the bureau chief, Israel bureau chief. Sorry, I was in Tel Aviv all this time. And I became the Israel bureau chief um, at the age of 34. I did that job for 3 years. And it's a herd. It's a herd mentality of Israel occupation, Palestinians corrupt, can't get their shit together, and that's the way it's going to be for the end of time. And so then it's just thing becomes a documenting the things that sort of fall in line with this narrative. And there's no depth to it. There's no time for depth. And it's increasingly so because the economics of the media industry are so fucked that all they have left is to project what they're feeling inside, which is fear and insecurity. I mean, have you noticed how much fear is being pumped into you from the media? Every day, especially if you live in the West, you walk outside and it's paradise. I mean, you have running water, you have electricity, you have AI, you have the internet, you've got computers, you've got cars, you've got electric cars, you've got planes, planes that work, you've got vacations, you've got everything. Food on call, on demand. You will never miss a meal in your entire life. Think about that. And the media will try to convince you that times are tough. And they are tough, and they're getting really, really bad. But that's because we're all sort of buying into this collective nightmare. And it's being fed to us by a media that thrives on selling you fear. You're being lied to. And this is not to say that the people who work in these industries are bad people. I've met them. They're not bad, and they're not dumb. They're really smart, and they're decent people. They're just terrified. They're terrified to speak the truth, to step out of line, because if they do, they're so scared of losing what they have. They're so scared to lose their status. They're so scared to lose their paycheck, especially now in media. You know, I worked at Bloomberg News, and that was considered like a golden cage. The salary was great. When I left, I was getting paid $200,000 a year. It was an amazing salary. um, and that was like a whoa. How do you even how can you make that much money in media? That was the kind of thinking, and it's still there. I mean, my friends are like this, that still work in media are very much like this. And it's all tied up, of course, in sort of personality types of they want to be seen as smart or as important, whatever, right? And so to give that up, to give up that platform is very, very hard for people. And then, of course, if that's the incentive, then don't be surprised that the shit you get is just it's bullshit. It's lies. And take for example the Israel genocide. You don't need to make shit up in order to prove your case. Like if Israel was committing a genocide, why do they need to cite a made-up organization that a made-up academic organization that no one had ever heard of, 5 minutes ago? And I mean no one, okay? Absolutely no one had ever heard of. And it turns out that it's just pure nonsense. That, you can pay $30 or whatever and become a member, and then you can just, I don't remember all the details of the story, but you understand what I'm saying. And you don't need to make up evidence to prove your argument. I mean, if you're doing that, clearly there's something really, really wrong. And but the media is so eager to push this, and you have to ask yourself, why? Why? They're not dumb. They're not dumb. They're afraid. They're afraid of saying the wrong thing and upsetting the wrong people. And they're all jealous of each other, right? They all want each other's spots. And so you read this over and over and over and over that these, left-wing liberal types, these media types, they're all just trying to outdo one another, saying Israel, genocide, genocide, Israel, and I'm a scholar, and I'm this, and I'm that. And clearly they're writing all this stuff so that no one will think badly about them in their peer group, because it's just not true. right? They make shit up all the time. They say Israel has genocidal intent. And so they'll quote, Netanyahu when he's clearly talking about Hamas that have to be destroyed and saying, oh no, he's talking about all of the Palestinians. Okay. So they obfuscate, right? They distort things to suit a narrative that is really just about their own status, protecting their own status. I know these people. I know these people. Some of these are my friends. And it's getting harder and harder and harder to remain friends with these types of people. Not because they're bad. It's just I can't stand the lies anymore. It pisses me off. It pisses me off. And why? I mean, why lie? Why why distort the truth? I'm going to walk you through a clip that I found of Ahed Tamimi being interviewed on a podcast, and she it's not an exhaustive clip. It's 3 minutes long. It's part of a longer interview. I haven't watched all of it, but it's quite revealing. And yes, the clips were selective, but nevertheless revealing. Like it's hard to it's hard to take it out of context when the clips themselves are the context itself. And I'll tell you exactly what I mean as we do this. So let me just set this up a little bit and tell you a bit more about Ahed because I think it's relevant. She was born in Nabi Saleh, which is a village of about a few hundred people in the West Bank. And she doesn't say too much about what her parents do in her book. She says that her father is employed by the Palestinian Authority and which she dislikes. She doesn't trust. She thinks that they're corrupt and just executors of Israel's occupation of the West Bank. Nothing more for that. And they've betrayed the cause of the Palestinians by flirting with peace or some sort of peaceful arrangement with Israel. Whereas she thinks that Israel is illegitimate and there should be one state and it should be Palestine. So she was born in this village, and she talks about this Israeli settlement called Chalamish, close by. And she talks about, as a kid, that Israel, the army, took over an aquifer in the village, or close to the village, that was in Arab hands for many decades, maybe more than 100 years. It's not clear. They just took it, and then they barred entrance for any Palestinians to go there. And this became a source of great tension, beyond the fact that, of course, that the West Bank is occupied by Israel. But this made it personal for the villagers there. And over time, and then all of a sudden, every Friday became a time to protest. Now, she calls it nonviolent protest, but the protesters do throw rocks and stones at the soldiers. And so she plays this sort of word game where she says that she's nonviolent and that throwing stones is a symbol of Palestinian resistance, that we're not going to be just walked over, we're no victims and things like that. But of course, anyone with any kind of common sense understands that throwing a rock at someone, doesn't matter if they're wearing a bulletproof vest or that they're in armored vehicles, is a form of violence. You can hurt someone by throwing a stone, period. If a friend of yours was throwing a stone at someone, at a stranger, at a friend, it didn't matter who, you would immediately grab that person by the collar, smack them upside the head, and say, please don't do that, right? Because that's an act of violence. So there's already that sort of first sense of confusion of terms here and the twisting of language to suit your own narrative, which is a common theme, I would say, and is suggestive of an ego that doesn't like being challenged, which is another theme that arises in this whole in her story and in these clips. Now, this was as a girl, and to be fair to Ahed, the Israeli forces, for the crime of arrested her father, her mother, her brothers, all for the crime of joining a largely peaceful, but with obviously its violent elements of protest every week. One time they beat her father into a coma, in which he had to endure for, I think it was about a week, 10 days. She had seen cousins get shot and killed. Her uncle was shot and killed. Tremendous amount of pain and suffering and sadness for a girl that lives in a village of a couple hundred people. And I can't blame her if she feels that she's at the center of the world there, because it's such a heightened experience of life to go through. So much pain and loss at such a young age. And it was after the death of her uncle and her cousin, I believe that I have this correct, that she attended one of these weekly protests, which she describes in the book being sometimes terrified to go to. I mean, absolutely terrified. She didn't want to be anywhere near live, not necessarily live fire, but certainly tear gas and rubber-coated bullets and things that really just can cause you bodily harm. And did, and obviously did, to people she knew and that were close to her. So she goes to one of these protests. She's just furious, enraged, and goes up to a soldier, an Israeli soldier, and she slaps him. Now, she gets arrested later that night, but she doesn't get arrested on the spot, which is telling, because it's not that the Israelis were reacting to the slap, because they let her go home. And it's not the fact that the Israelis were upset that her mother filmed this and recorded this and uploaded it to Facebook, because they didn't immediately arrest her for doing just that. The Israelis reacted when this thing went viral. That's when they came home. They came and invaded and barged into Ahed's home and arrested her in the middle of the night, something like 2 a.m, which is also interesting and revealing, because it wasn't the slap, it wasn't the act of the recording, it was the virality of it. Of like, oh fuck, what if more people get the bad idea that hitting a soldier is a good idea, it's going to get you all this attention. And so we have to react and we have to suppress this. Now, of course, this backfired miserably against the Israelis. Because what did they do? They arrested this girl, 17, I think 16, maybe. And they interrogated her. Who's behind you? Who's setting you up to do this? All this kind of stuff. And the interrogation was leaked, and that went viral. And so this thing just sort of, the more Israel reacted, the more violent and suppressive that they were towards Ahed and her family, the more this thing ballooned and mushroomed, because it was this superpower that was cracking down on a 16-year-old girl. It's absolutely pathetic and ridiculous. And the reaction to Ahed, not the slap itself, but the reaction puffed her up into the stratosphere, because she then spent 9 months in Israeli prison, which was no picnic. And after she got out, she was an international symbol of the Palestinian resistance movement. She flew all around Europe. I think she dreamed of being the next Neymar, the female Neymar as a kid, and dropped that dream when the expectations of her community and her family crashed down on her. And she felt that she had to be this thing for the Palestinians. She even flew to Spain. I can't remember if it was Real Madrid or was it Barcelona, but she went to one of those clubs and they honored her, and she gave speeches everywhere, and she was interviewed by every single media outlet in the world. I mean, she did a marathon of interviews and speeches and talks, and she traveled to South Africa. I mean, she was really catapulted many, many people wanted her attention, were giving her attention. And 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 so it's not just the glaring one-sidedness of all this, the big powerful Israel against the young Palestinian David. It's also the stupidity of it all, right? That's so jarring and glaring, so apparent in this one story. And so many people, so many Palestinians identify with her. And so many people outside of Palestine identify with her. So she became this larger than life symbol for what's going on in the West Bank. And that's the reason why I chose her. Because, well, there are not many people like her who have this kind of experience. And what she says resonates with quite a lot of people. So it's no ordinary civilian that I'm analyzing. And because this person is a symbol and represents and does the things that others won't say or do, it means that pieces of her are sort of multiplied all over the West Bank and all over the world. Now, I want to hone in a little bit on the rage that she has been feeling ever since she was a kid. She is pissed off, and rightly so, that this foreign army invades her home, the home of her family members, her friends, her schoolmates, all the time, looking for intel. And it's infuriating because it's like, I'm a girl. I'm not here to do anything. I just want you off my property, off my village. I want access to the thing that I had access to only a couple of years ago. Like, what? Leave you the hell alone. And she's got a hell of a point. The problem with that, if you want to call it a problem, is that it's narrow-minded. It's not seeing the full picture. I'm not justifying it. I'm just trying to expand the viewpoint, I suppose, to make it more full and complete. Because if you only have a piece of the story, then you can't reconcile it with the other pieces of it, and then you can't make peace. Period. So the occupation. Why do the Israelis invade the homes of civilians all the time? Well, one, the nature of this thing. Palestinian leadership won't get its hands dirty. If you've noticed, Hamas, the leadership anyway, has lots and lots of money, and they live in Qatar or Turkey or maybe now in Egypt. They don't live in Gaza. Others do the dying for them. Others are people who live in the homes in Gaza and in the West Bank. Ordinary, so-called ordinary civilians, people. I mean, we're all ordinary, but you understand what I'm saying. These aren't people that have official positions or are in any sort of position of authority. And so, if the people who pose the immediate danger to Israel and the Jews are in these homes, these civilians, and they aren't living in the high life in abroad, it stands to reason that the dirty work, so-called, to keep your country safe has to be done house to house, village to village, and so on and so forth. And in order to bust up these networks, you've got to be in everywhere and at all times. It's terrifying, but it's necessary. Now, it's brutal as well. It's absolutely brutal. And inhumane, because Ahed and her family's response to this is totally natural. They were just born into this. What the hell? What did she do? She didn't do anything. She was born into a crazy world where her society is pumping really bad ideas into its people and with devastating consequences. But that doesn't mean that she's a bad person. It doesn't mean that her parents are bad people. They just have sides to them that respond to ideas. And there's a lot of social pressure to conform to these ideas and to not break away, to not see through how terrible they are. That it leads to the situation that we're in. We're stuck. Now, it means that this occupation is ultimately a placeholder. It's just there to keep things safe and secure, but not to solve anything. That's not the real issue. The real issue isn't that people are on their own coming up with these ideas and saying, "Oh, let's go attack the Jews." No, 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 no. It's a system. It's a system of thought, and it's controlling people. And the people at the top who have these ideas do it for their own reasons. And what the top is, who knows? Anyway, let's get into it, and I'll tell you exactly what I mean.
تعريفي لليهودية من وأنا صغيرة إنه اليهودية هي نفسها الصهيونية، ما في فرق بين هاي وبين هاي.
For those of you who are just listening, I'll read the translation for you. So she says, "My definition of Judaism ever since I was a child has been that it is the same as Zionism. There is no difference between the two." Okay, let's stop right there. First of all, your definition as a child? No. Children don't come up with definitions for world religions. You were told these things. It's just the way it works. Yeah, she's not special, and no child comes up with ways of defining very complicated things like religious belief systems. So that's wrong. And it's also interesting because what she's saying is these ideas are mine, and her identity is with these ideas, that Judaism and Zionism is the same thing, which, by the way, is incorrect. She actually doesn't say that in her book. She explicitly says that the opposite in her book. Fair enough. Something happened in between. It was when it was published, which was 2022, I believe. And now, by the way, she writes in her book about Jewish people like Miko Peled and this other activist, Jonathan something, who come and they become part of her family. And so something made her change her mind where, on the one hand, she recognized that there were Jewish people that were on her side and didn't like the occupation and so on and so forth. And now she just says it's all the same. Zionism, occupation, Judaism, it's all one. Something changed in the intervening 3 years. But the fact that she believes that these ideas are hers is a fundamental error that most people make. Ideas are not yours. You are born into a world that was prepared for you by those that came before you. And your job is to take what works and to fix what doesn't. That's it. None of this is yours. Don't confuse the fact that while you might be a Jew or a Palestinian or an Arab or whatever, the language isn't yours, the history isn't yours, all that stuff's not, you didn't come up with it, is what I'm trying to say. You may have ownership over it, sure. But you certainly didn't invent these things. So that's number one. And number two is, if that's the case, then someone is pumping in these ideas. Someone is transferring. There's a transfer going on where you have parents or education system or political system or whatever that is pumping certain ideas from their minds into the minds of the next generation, including I. So A, she's contradicting what she wrote in her book, that Judaism and Zionism are two different things. But B, it's interesting to think of the motives for that switch. And they'll become more apparent later on in this clip. But if you make this about Judaism, then what you're setting yourself up for is total war of annihilation. Because you could say, look, we don't have a problem with all Jews. But we do realize, and this part is true, that Zionism and Judaism are very, very tightly linked. Now, there are cases in the minority, on the fringes, of Jewish people who say Israel is no good, get rid of this thing, not in my name. You've got Peter Beinart, you've got the Neturei Karta, you've got all sorts of examples. Again, on the fringes, not in the mainstream at all, but they exist. So that sort of disproves the idea that Judaism is Zionism. And also, the fact is that nobody really defines what Judaism actually is, right? I mean, what is the thing that unites someone like me and some rabbi in some congregation in Poland or Russia or in Dubai or in Madrid, and Peter Beinart and my father and my friends? What exactly is the thing that unites all those people? Because for example, I use electricity on Shabbat. I don't eat kosher food. I rarely go to synagogue, but I consider myself Jewish, and it's a very integral part of who I am. And there are rituals and celebrations, and in fact, even the most around the most important milestones of my life. So when I got married, when I had my kids, when I was born, we had these little rituals, these little celebrations that were wrapped in this Jewish uh, packaging, if you want. And so even every Friday night when we sit around the table for Shabbat, it's beautiful, right? We're marking space, and we're doing so in a Jewish way to say, forget the world, forget everything else that's going on. It's family time, and we're here, and we're welcoming people. The atmosphere is different, and there's something very Jewish about that, and that isn't taught, I suppose, in the mainstream. Certainly not the way that I experience it. But nevertheless, like there's still these rituals that bind us together. But rituals just for the sake of rituals don't mean anything. Like there's got to be something underneath it. That there's got to be an idea, a belief, of some sort of core thing going on that unites all of us together, right? Why do the songs that we sing on Shabbat and on the holidays, why do they mean so much? Why does the Seder on Pesach, on Passover, mean something to Jewish people? And so it does create a community, but a community around what, right? Is it about land grabs? Is it about occupation? Is it about the subjugation of others? Is it about chosenness? Is it about this feeling that we're somehow better than others? It's not a one straightforward answer. It's very hard to pinpoint exactly what it means to be Jewish. And it means different things to different people. Some people don't really care, and they just like being part of a community. I don't know. It means different things to other people. And the way you know that is that there is no one type of Jew. Every Jewish person practices it in their own individual way. Yes, there are things that unite us all, but still, everyone has their own twist. And it's okay. It's wonderful. It's beautiful. Do you? So to say that Zionism and Judaism, it's the same. It's wrong in a very nuanced fashion. But the deeper point is that if you sever the link between Judaism and Zionism, if you bind it together and you destroy Judaism, there's no more Judaism in the world. Then you finally get the relief of, okay, now I don't have to deal with this anymore. And you'll see that this is actually what's bubbling up underneath. And relief from what? What would drive a person to say, get rid of all the Jews? Get rid of Judaism by whatever means necessary. If you've got to kill them all, fine. If you've got to convert them all, fine. Whatever. Just let's end this thing. Now, it's a feeling that she has inside. My disappearance won't make a damn difference to her in her life. She has no idea who I am. She has no idea who 99.9% of Jews are. So my death and the death of all those other people won't really make such a huge difference in her personal life. There's a feeling inside of her that needs to be dealt with. And the sad thing is that she's now turning genocidal. All right, let's continue. So she says, to this day, I keep saying that I do not need to defend Jews, and if a Jew does not want his religion to be defined this way, he can join me in the struggle against Zionism. Let's pause for a second. Yes, true. And she already knows people she personally knows people who are Jewish people who are precisely this, that they are Jewish, identify as Jewish, and say, we don't like Zionism, we don't like Israel. So I don't know what she's talking about, but go on.
ولحد اليوم أنا بحكي أنا مش مضطرة أدافع عن اليهودية. إذا اليهودي ما بده يتعرف دينه بهاي الطريقة فيجي يكون شريك معي بالنضال ضد هاي الصهيونية. وأنا تربيت إنه اليهودية احتلال، فلليوم ولبكرة ولبعد مليون سنة راح أضل أحكي إنه اليهودية تتعرف لأطفال فلسطين اللي بعمري واللي أصغر مني على إنها احتلال، وإحنا بنكون قوم باليهود مش بالصهيونية.
I was raised to believe that Judaism means occupation. And today, tomorrow, and a million years from now, I will continue to say that Judaism should be presented to the children of Palestine, children of my age and younger, as occupation, and that we are fighting the Jews, not Zionism. A couple of things. One, children like herself, she's now in her early 20s, and honestly, she looks like she's 40. I'm not saying that to be mean. I'm not saying that but she looks like she's really going through some shit. And I know she was arrested again and released in the first prisoner exchange after October 7th. So I can probably imagine that she writes even in her book about being depressed and facing all this pressure to live up to some image that was foisted upon her. She looks like she's going through hell. She does not look like she's in her early 20s. That the sort of the youthful glow that she used to have, it's gone in this clip. She's not there. To educate the children of Palestine for now until eternity that Judaism equals Zionism and so on and so forth, and Judaism equals occupation. Well, there you go, right? I was educated to believe. So, okay, there's that admission. And it's not true because, again, in her book, she says differently. In whose interest is it exactly to foment this kind of behavior? To preoccupy otherwise normal people. To believe this kind of stuff, to embark in this sort of black and white, all or nothing, every single Jew is extinguished, or we have perpetual conflict. You have to ask yourself, right, who's educating these people? Why would they do that? And I mean, it's not a secret, right? I mean, we know who's doing this stuff. It is the people who are at the head of the Palestinian Authority. It is the people who are at the head of Hamas. It is the people who fund them, right? And why do they do that? Well, duh, right? If you keep people busy with this impossible revenge fantasy that is Palestinian culture, then you never ever really get the time to focus on fixing yourselves, which is precisely the fucking problem. Look, the media sucks in its coverage of this stuff. Why? Because they look at things through a collective lens and not on the level of the individual. Look, if a friend of yours was blaming all their problems on someone else and never sort of pointing the finger inwards and saying, what do I need to fix within myself? Why am I living out this pattern? Why are things not working out for me? And always blaming the world, you would tell that person, dude, come on, this is not, you're not helping here anything. You're setting yourself up for failure. You think that other people are going to change for you. No way. You have no control over anyone else. The only thing you have any semblance of control is yourself. As I said, we're born into this world. There's this narrative and this world and all these ideas and all this culture that's pushed on us by parents, by schools, by TV, by corporations, by everyone. And they're all trying to sell us some shit, you know? And you have no choice in the matter. You're just born into it. You're thrown into it. And the only choice you have is to sort of acknowledge what's going on and to decide in the moment, what are you going to do right now? But what are you going to do right now? And if your answer is you're never going to question all the things that were handed down to you, and you're never going to examine yourself and your weaknesses and how the weaknesses that you have are not necessarily, I mean, weakness might be a bad word, but they're certainly not failings. It's human. It's normal. It's normal to get angry. It's normal to be jealous. It's normal to be resentful. It's normal to love. It's normal to hate. It's normal. All these things are normal. Everyone feels these things, and whoever doesn't says that they don't is lying to you. Something wrong with Ahed. It's just she is struggling inside with the things that she feels, and again, she admits this later on, and later on in this clip. I'm not putting words in her mouth. Okay, everyone goes through the same thing, but she's being puppet mastered. Is what I'm trying to say, and all of these people are being puppet mastered. Now, it's nothing personal towards Ahed. Most people are puppet mastered. Most people are treated like sheep and behave like as such. They do as they're told. And it takes an incredibly strong person to look within themselves, examine themselves, and say, okay, this is where I am. This is what I believe. What of this is true, and what of it can I dispense with? Now, put yourself in her shoes. She's been catapulted to superstardom at the age of 16 or 17 for slapping a soldier. She didn't fix Palestine. She didn't fix cancer. She hit someone. Now, very brave. Extremely brave. The balls on this woman. Wow. Right? And she went to prison for it. Whoa. Nope, they didn't break her in that sense. So the whole world is telling her, good job. Great, good for you. And she's supposed to take all this information and she's supposed to say, well, all these people who are cheering me on for their own reasons, not necessarily for the best reasons, but they're cheering me on nonetheless. And I'm supposed to take that as a sign that they're wrong. It's tough, man. It's really tough. I feel for her. I really do. Again, as an outside observer, as someone that I'm trying to be a friend here. May never meet her, whatever. The point is, she's on the path to self-destruction and she's admitting it, as we'll see. Okay?
فشو فايدة الحكي بالميديا على الرأي الغربي عن معاناتي؟ سوري، بس أنا اللي لازم أعطي رأيي في هذا العالم، مش العالم اللي يعطي رأيه فيه. فلا تحكي لي ميديا غربية ولا أي ميديا بالدنيا اللي تيجي تحكي رأيها. لا، لو سمع كل العالم بده يسكت ويسكر تمه، والفلسطيني بده يحكي. إحنا فوق كل العالم، لأنه إحنا الوحيدين في هذا العالم اللي قاعدين بنقاوم الظلم على حساب حياتنا وعلى حساب إنسانيتنا.
Here she goes. What's the point of all the media talk about the Western view of my suffering? Sorry, but I should be giving my opinion about the world, not the other way around. Western media, or any media in the world, should not come and present its views. No, the whole world needs to shut up when a Palestinian is talking. We are superior to the entire world because we are the only ones in the world fighting injustice at the expense of our lives and the expense of our humanity. I mean, there you go. That's it. You can feel her ego just hanging on to the story that she's been fed, and she's just trying with dear life, hanging on, saying "fuck off" and don't tell me anything. I'm not wrong. All of you are wrong. All of you are wrong, and we're way better than you guys. You understand? The ego lashes out to any sort of criticism and says, "No way. Don't tell me what's right or wrong." And she's got a case for it. Again, she's at a very young age been put in this position of you are now a symbol for all of us. The problem is that there are more successful societies in the world, and they happen to be, for the most part, in the West. And so it's very painful, from personal experience, but for anyone to say, boy, I'm wrong. Now, please tell me why your method is better. This argument about West versus Islam or any of that kind of stuff, first of all, I think the whole conversation is nonsensical, but in terms of the world of facts, the West is wealthier and it's more, and because it's free, more free than it is in the Muslim world. The Muslim world, in the parts where it is wealthy because they got extraordinarily lucky. Period. They have a lot of oil, a lot of gas, and Western powers, for a very smart and shrewd reason, said we need that to power our economies. And they, with their technology, they developed the industry on behalf of these countries, which they then learned how to do and manage and outsource and so on and so forth. And then, of course, they extracted the wealth for themselves. That's the only reason why the Gulf countries are so fantastically wealthy, and there's no wealth anywhere else in the Muslim or Arab world. Maybe Turkey, fine, but and that's not an issue of natural resources or not. It's not a question of how big is the market or not. Egypt is an enormous country. It's not one of the most wealthy countries in the world. It's the question of what is the mentality that best produces a productive society and peaceful and prosperous. And that mentality is in the West. It's just a fact. It's just a fact. And every time that mentality is replicated in other areas, so-called not in the West, it works. Even in China, for example, which is a communist dictatorship, whatever the hell that means. What they try to ape the capitalist model of innovation and technology and markets and factories and so on and so forth. They trade with the world, and look at that. They use debt. I don't really understand exactly how they're communist, but it's some sort of a hybrid thing. But it works, even under those conditions, where they're just stealing stuff and forcing people to work and obeying a dictatorship. It works. It's not sustainable, but it works. So for her to say that we are superior to you all, I mean, superior in what way? Exactly. Does the West have nothing to offer you? Don't you think that's a little arrogant? Don't you think that the reason she's lashing out so harshly is because deep down she knows that she's wrong? I mean, it's not a debate. It's over. That debate is over. All the evidence is in. It's over. It's not rocket science. It's there. Just open your eyes. It's frustrating.
كل يوم أنا بروح بنام بحط راسي على المخدة وبدعي لربي إنه يا رب حافظ لي على الإنسانية المتبقية من جواي، لأنه أنا ما بدي أصير قاتلة. في الغرب عندكم إذا ولد طفل صرخت عليه أمه بيكبر وبصير قاتل متسلسل.
Every night when I go to sleep, I put my head on the pillow and I pray to God to protect the humanity left inside of me. Now, here we go. Because I don't want to become a killer. In this West of yours, if a mother screams at her child, he grows up to become a serial killer. First of all, no. Mothers scream at their kids all the time, in every house, in every society, and serial killers are extraordinarily rare. So, no. Like every mom screams at her kids, and every father screams at his kids. We're all human here. Like, let's drop the bullshit, okay? And serial killers are like exceedingly rare. So, what the fuck is she talking about? But she says every night she prays to keep her humanity. Now, just before she said that Zionism is Judaism and Judaism is Zionism, and basically the undertone there is genocidal. And even in her book, she says that Israel is 48, or the former Palestinian cities. She describes a visit to Akko, which I'll get into in a second. Is not in Israel, but it's in 48. Why 48? Because Akko, or Acre, was a majority. I mean, I think more than 90% was Arab, Muslim, and Christian, and a very, very small minority of Jews. And in the War of 48, most of them were expelled. And she says, the real solution to this is a one state where everyone is free. And of course, every time someone says this, they don't ever spell out the details. It's always left vague and fuzzy because they don't have an answer to how they plan on doing this. Like, here's one question. Let's say Israel falls, collapses. What happens to the so-called refugees in Gaza and the West Bank? Do they claim their homes in these places, like in Akko, for example? And what happens to the people who live there right now? Do they just have to get up and leave and find their own home? Like, how does that work? What would be the official language of the country and the economic system? And what holidays would everyone celebrate? Very, very basic things that define a country that nobody ever answers in this idea of a one-state solution. And things that are left unclear are then destined to be fought over because people are going to have ideas. And if there's no agreement, well, then they have to fight it out, don't they? And when you're talking about fighting out the very fundamental things that govern a person's life, where they live, what language they speak, their status economically, but also socially, cultural rituals, the things that ground your life and make your life who you are. If you're going to throw all that into chaos, you are asking for civil war. You're asking people to go insane and then to fight over it. She says that she puts her head on a pillow every night and wishes that God protect her humanity. What does that mean exactly? It's an admission of, I don't want to become a killer, she says. She is telling you that she is entertaining thoughts of murderous rage. And It's there. It's built into the system. It's built into the language. It's built into the ideology of let's get rid of Israel and 48 instead of Israel. I mean, that's how it takes root. And all you need is frustrated young people who feel that their lives are slipping away and all their potential, their hidden potential, is being wasted in this fucking pointless conflict that has absolutely no solution as it is right now. They feel this and they say, God, fuck this life. If only we could just kill every motherfucker that is in our way, then this thing would be over. I understand. Yeah. That is a human response. You might not like it. You might think it's wrong, but it's human. And if you were in those shoes, there's a great chance that you would react and think the same goddamn way. You might just not have the balls to do it. But someone like her, she's telling you, she is expressing to you, she is struggling. She is really facing some really dark stuff. And so, well, that's the symbol of the Palestinian movement, or one of them. Anyway, struggling with genocidal thoughts.
كل العالم بتيجي بتجرب علينا الأسلحة زي كأنه إحنا حقل تجارب وساكتين. فلا، لو سمحتوا، مش رأي الغربي ولا الميديا الغربية شو بدها تحكي عني، كلهم بدهم يسكروا تمهم ويسمعوا للفلسطيني، لأنه الفلسطيني اليوم اللي له الحق يحكي.
Everybody in the world comes and tests their weapons on us, as if we were guinea pigs, and they keep silent. So with all due respect, I don't care what the Western media has to say about me. They should all shut their mouths and listen to the Palestinians, because the Palestinians have the right to speak today. Anyway, I don't think I need to comment anymore. So this goes on.
أنا وصلت لمرحلة نفسي تصير حرب عالمية ثالثة، يموت مين ما يموت ويعيش مين ما يعيش، المهم نخلص. أنا وصلت لحد هاي المرحلة.
I have reached a point where I wish for World War III. Stop. World War III, nuclear powers, you do the math. Okay? She's spelling it out for you. Whoever dies, dies, and whoever lives, lives. The important thing is that we be over with this. I have reached this point. See what I mean? And again, it's important for me to stress this. I don't blame her. I don't blame anyone that believes in this stuff either. I get it. If your life is just strictly this, where it's just occupation and war, and you're desperate to find a way out of this, that leads you down this very, very dark path that destroys your soul, I think that you need to understand that it could happen to you. It could happen to anyone. And so, what's necessary? Let's start with that. What's necessary is some truth. In her book, Ahad talks about going to Akko, as I said to you before, and she describes it as a really just a wonderful day. Why? For one, she gets to play in the ocean. Akko is a coastal city and has a very rich history. And she gets to play in the ocean, which she's landlocked in the West Bank. And she sees ruins that give her hope, because it gives her hope in the following way. She goes to a place, Akko, and she says, "Wow, how cool that you see these ruins from the era of the Crusaders, and you see more ruins from the time of the Ottomans." And she says, "How cool, right?" And I'm thinking to myself, "Good God, lady, none of this is Palestinian. Get a fucking clue, right? I mean, you can keep going back and you'll find some Jewish stuff there as well. But Crusaders were Christians and Ottomans were, well, today, I suppose Turks, but they weren't Arab, let alone Palestinian." And she says it was a magical day because she was hanging out with in the areas that are mostly Arab, which and I think Akko at the time had something like 30 to 35% of the population was Arab. And she said, "Wow, how cool to see these thriving people," and it gave her hope and a glimpse to the future where Israel is gone and that this will just spread all over. And I thought, again, lady, get a clue. You're inside of Israel and you see Muslims and Arabs thriving. That wonderful future that you're talking about is right there and then. You don't have it because you live in the West Bank, but they do. And if that's what you want, then perhaps you should pay attention to what they have and try to emulate whatever works for you. Instead of telling the West to go shut the fuck up, maybe you should shut the fuck up and listen to what the West has to say and then make it work for you. So some truth, a lot of truth, only truth would go a long way. And then it's about designing the alternative, right? It's about having a vision about where this thing is going to go. You know, Donald Trump, a couple months ago, when he said that America was going to take over Gaza, he put out this AI generated video where he, so tongue in cheek, in a very playful way, painted this picture of what Gaza could be. And women in bikinis and high rises, and him and Netanyahu on the beach enjoying a cocktail. And people on the pro-Palestine side, I don't know if it's everyone, all of them, the majority of the minority, but certain people, and I suppose Ahad was one of them, got annoyed. Why? They said, much like Ahad says now, who are these people to tell us what to do and what to want? And I suppose you could say that they have a point, right? Who are these arrogant people to telling me that they've never spent a day in my shoes and to tell me how to live my damn life? Fair enough. However, Donald Trump, I don't know the man, never met the man, but he, safe to assume, spends his time and has done so for many, many years with rich and powerful people. Obviously. If anyone's going to do that, it's him. And rich and powerful people from all over the world. So he's seen what people in these societies like and how they like to spend their time. And I don't think it's, how shall I say this politely? But I'm guessing he's got personal experience with these rich and powerful people and their tastes for, shall we say, the high life and beauty. I'm guessing. I'm guessing. Look, all those parties in New York and Epstein and all that kind of stuff. And what exactly is wrong with high rises and having fun at the beach and women in bikinis and all that kind of stuff? Is there something wrong with enjoying all those things? Is it just a Western thing, a European thing, an American thing, an Australian thing? Or doesn't everyone enjoy that? What's wrong with going shopping and going to restaurants and going on vacation and first class and five-star hotels and all that stuff? Is there something actually wrong with these things? Or can we just enjoy? And is that better than what the current reality in Gaza? And again, just very basic questions to ask yourself and to respond. To lash out and say, who are you to tell us, and blah, 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 suggests a, a, a level of egomania, I suppose, to say, look, I will not listen to anyone. I won't. How dare you tell me something better? And but that needs to be pumped into that society on a grand scale, persistently. Someone needs to come up with a much better vision of the future for those people, because I only see genocide. Um, and I only see genocide from Ahad in this clip.
فاذا بده يروح يروح كل العالم، مش فارقه يضربوا نووي يروح كل العالم في هذا النووي، بس مش الفلسطيني لحاله. الغربي يحكي باستعلائيه انه انا بقدم للفلسطيني، انت غصب عنك بدك تقدم للفلسطيني. انا بدفع ثمن اغلاطك انت ودولتك، انت ونظامك السياسي، انت ونظامك الاقتصادي على ارضي. انا بترتكب اباده في حقي بسبب دولكم انتو. فمحدش يجي يحكي معي باستعلائية انه انا بقدم للفلسطيني. انت بدك تقدم للفلسطيني والفلسطيني لسه ما بده يحكي لك شكرا.
Let the whole world be destroyed. I don't care. Let them drop nuclear bombs and destroy the whole world. And so it won't just be the Palestinians. By the way, that means you and me as well. So just so you understand that this is not that this is actually personal. Okay. The Westerners patronize by saying we give aid to the Palestinians. You will give aid to the Palestinians whether you like it or not. I am paying the price for your mistakes and the mistakes of your country and your political and economic systems on my own land. We suffer genocide because of your countries. So nobody should patronize me and say that he gives aid to the Palestinians. You should give aid to the Palestinians, and they will not thank you. Okay. Um, I I was a journalist for 8 years, and one of the gripes I had was that journalists don't really know what they're talking about. Why? They haven't spent a day in the shoes of the people that they cover. So if they cover politics, they've never actually been inside the system. If they cover business, they've never actually run a company. If they cover war, they've never actually been in the military and been a general and so on and so forth. So the coverage is always lacking. And I'll just say this in business, because I do some sales and some marketing. If you think that you are going to get your results by just demanding the things that you want and never focusing on the other person and never listening to them and never catering to their interests and their well, so long as of course it's mutual and there's mutual benefit involved, you will get nowhere. This kind of attitude is self-defeating. Nobody likes to do business with such a person. I mean, seriously, give us money and don't even expect to thank you. That's money from taxpayers. Why why do they owe you anything? I mean, this is one of the main lessons I've learned in the last few years is that nobody owes you a goddamn thing. Doesn't matter how much you've suffered. It doesn't matter. You know, you're trapped in your own suffering, and you think that someone is coming to save you or something. Like what? Someone's coming to save you, and then you're going to spit in their face. This is the ego breaking down in front of our eyes and unwilling to let go of everything that they've believed and held on because it feels like losing everything and it feels like going insane. And the thing is, there are certain things that she says that are true, like the occupation is a disgrace. It's not in the interest of anyone, really. You think that the soldiers who occupy the West Bank are happy that they're there? You think that this is their preferred path through life? So she's right about certain things. I'm not saying that she's totally wrong. She is right about certain things. What the hell, man? Why are the Israelis taking away this aquifer from her in her village? You know, water is scarce enough. What the hell is your problem? Why are they barging into her house when she's a little girl and beating her dad into a coma? These are all valid questions. Um, and this is what we're up against. Now, this might sound naive, weak, but I don't view Ahad as my enemy. Someone who wants me dead. Me and my parents and my kids and my friends and the place I spent 14 years, magical years, wants all that gone. It sounds absolutely insane to say that this is not my enemy. And look, if she takes up arms and starts plotting the death of all that, yeah, it's either you or me, and she's got to go. Because my ideas are better. But I don't view her as my enemy because she's still human. She's still struggling. She's not a complete psychopath, not yet anyway. On her way, but not yet. And she's still young. And if someone can just show her, hey, listen, things actually can get better, and in a hurry, then what is there to argue about? Why be enemies still? Now, you could say wishful thinking, naive, fine, right? And I would say at the moment if that is what you think, then you're probably right. So the question is, what's the alternative? Because the Jews are more or less suffering through the same dilemma. Look, after October 7th, there was an era of genocidal thinking amongst the Jews themselves. And it still persists to this day. The other day, I was at a friend's house, the house of my son's friends, and they're Israelis, and he was asked by his former school, he said, what do you think should happen to Gaza? And he said, just flatten the whole fucker and turn it into a parking lot. This is not a religious guy. It's just an Israeli guy. Grew up in the kibbutz. I'm guessing he had sort of left-wing politics. Said, fuck this. These people, they've proven that they want us all dead. And if it's me or you, I'm going to choose me every single time. And we're getting closer and closer to this sort of showdown of genocidal thoughts between one and the other. Not that Israel's committing a genocide right now, because both sides, as Ahad is doing right now, are struggling with it. If this continues, it's only rational for a voice to rise up amongst the Jews and say, I'm going to say the quiet part aloud, and it's time to either kill them all or expel them all, whatever. But enough. Enough. These people will never learn their lesson. They will never give it up, and it's time to expel and kill them all. You can already see that happening a little bit. You can already sort of see it bubbling up. And there will be people who say, fine. And the way that groups work is that you need a leader and a charismatic one and perfect timing. And then people are like sheep and they follow. And they convince themselves that this is the right move. And the scary thing is that it might be true. How's that for truth? So if I were Ahad, I would wake up, because until now, sounds crazy to say, but the Israelis have been pretty nice about all this. As crazy as that sounds, they've been sort of nice about it. When will that change? I think we're running out of time. And what we saw from Mahid is not encouraging. But that doesn't mean that the game is over. See ya.